Jinwoo stepped inside the gate, and then both he and the glow vanished from sight, leaving behind only darkness. A monster clad in large heavy armor swung its sword, engaging Jinwoo in combat as best it could. Instantly, Jinwoo dodged the attack, and he was far stronger than the creature, and with incredible speed he closed the distance and eliminated his enemy. He used his critical strike, an ability that consumed his mana and was reserved solely for his dagger, to slay the monster as quickly as possible. The monster continued to attack him, making him use his sprint to dodge. To his surprise, Jinwoo noticed that his attacks did no real damage, watching as the monster calmly withstood the magic. Reflecting on it, he realized the creature wasn't especially powerful, its armor was simply durable enough to keep it alive. Jinwoo analyzed the fight and noted the lack of unpredictability in the monster's movements, and that its attacks lacked the force needed to knock him down. When the monster aimed its sword again, it missed entirely. Meanwhile, Jinwoo's shadow slipped behind it, scouting different angles for a counterattack. He recalled a past battle where his blade had been ineffective against similarly tough armor. Relying on his tremendous speed, he grabbed the monster's head and tore it apart before it had any chance to react. Jinwoo identified it as a puppet-type monster, commenting that it was useless in prolonged battles, barely even worth classifying as a monster. Because Jinwoo was using a torch for lighting instead of a fluorescent rock, the area remained quite dark. He realized he couldn't afford to spend too much mana here, as escaping required clearing the entire dungeon without leaving anything behind. It dawned on him that had he foreseen this situation, he would have allocated more stat points into intelligence to avoid such limitations in his magical capacity. This career change quest was proving to be dangerously demanding. He also acknowledged that he had no way to heal himself, and suspected that he might be stuck here for a long time. Trying to stay focused, Jinwoo wondered whether he had completed his daily quest, which usually took over 12 hours and was extremely tedious. He knew he needed to finish everything in this dungeon quickly so he could start his daily quest on time, thinking to himself that the centipedes would probably be next. At first, as Jinwoo looked ahead and saw the path blocked by bulky armored figures, he understood there was only one thing left to do. He said he needed to deal with these monsters and their formidable defenses before moving forward. Without wasting time on overthinking, he leaned in as if locking onto a target. After dropping the torch, his open palm clenched into a fist, gathering so much force that powerful air currents began swirling around it. Aiming precisely, Jinwoo struck the armor of one of the monsters, hitting with such impact that it was lifted into the air. His speed was so overwhelming that even without regaining footing, he dragged another monster behind him. Out of the four enemies, two were launched a great distance, propelled by the sheer power of his punch and the gusting stream of air surrounding them. Wasting not even a second, Jinwoo morphed into a shadow-like blur and launched himself high into the air. Calculating his jump trajectory perfectly, he drove his knee into the head of one of the airborne monsters, taking it down instantly. He then turned to the other, grabbed its head with a crushing grip, and summoned all his strength to end it. The pressure he exerted was so intense that the monster's head burst off in the space between Jinwoo's shoulder and elbow. At that moment, he realized that if his dagger couldn't do the job, he simply had to strike where the bones were. Jinwoo examined the armor lying scattered on the ground, noticing that some pieces had even fallen off completely, though overall they still seemed decent enough. Amused, he remarked to himself that it was a good thing no one could see this gear, because while it looked ridiculous on the outside, the real question was whether it could actually protect him. As he continued inspecting the area, he came across a bag of gold, and after a rough estimate, calculated that it contained around 30,000 gold coins. At some point, Jinwoo suddenly became aware that someone was right next to him, prompting him to react with instantaneous speed, just barely in time. His dagger struck precisely, landing a direct hit to the head of one of the monsters. In his thoughts, he questioned whether the creature had been hiding behind a disguise. The discovery didn't reassure him, instead it made him slightly tense. The task was already far from easy, and now there were monsters capable of disguising themselves. Jinwoo spotted what appeared to be a mage standing before him, and quickly realized that this time the disguised monster specialized in firepower. He had no clear understanding of what was happening in this strange place, noting that the magician was using illusion magic, just like Cho Qhuan once had. As he sifted through his thoughts, everything began to feel eerily familiar, as though he were reliving a past battle. The room was teeming with monsters, each wielding a wide variety of dangerous skills and abilities, many of which posed serious threats to him. Jinwoo came to understand that this dungeon was far more complex than he had anticipated, filled with monsters of different types, each with unique traits. He realized that if he reduced his strength, he wouldn't be able to break the knight's armor, and if his instincts dropped, he'd struggle against assassins. He needed to conserve as much mana as possible and stop chasing fleeting opportunities, as his fatigue was mounting. Turning his back to the chaos, he felt as though everything was working against him, leaving him no room to recover his energy. Sweat began to bead on his skin, and his breathing grew uneven. The longer he stayed here, the worse his condition became. Eventually, he sat down on the cold floor, body slightly hunched, thinking he needed to close his eyes for a moment to ease the exhaustion. But just as he was about to relax, his hand instinctively reached for a sharpened arrow. That's when he realized rest was no longer an option. A large group of armored archers had gathered before him, their intent to slaughter him unmistakable. Gripping the arrow in frustration, Jinwoo snapped it in half, deeply annoyed that even a moment of rest had been denied to him. Wasting no time, Jinwoo opened the leather pouch and pulled out a flask of fresh water along with 20,000 gold coins, resources that might prove useful. He assessed his condition and noted that he had somewhat recovered from his fatigue and had gathered a variety of items that could aid him in the upcoming battle. Standing alone in an empty room, Jinwoo remarked that even with his adrenaline still surging, there was one thing he couldn't grasp. He had no way of understanding the level of whatever awaited him behind the towering golden door. That door concealed something powerful, something intriguing, and he knew it wouldn't be easy. Wasting no time, Jinwoo pressed his hand against the door, which slowly began to open. He quickly realized it was the boss room. Inside, a powerful gust of wind stirred the air, ruffling his hair and tugging lightly at his clothes. The chill was so intense it sent a tremor through his spirit. Jinwoo scanned the room, carefully analyzing his surroundings and noting that it resembled a throne room, although no one was present yet. As he stepped farther inside, he was struck by the overwhelming and terrifying aura that filled the space, a sensation that could only spell danger. He tried to understand what his body was telling him. His ears, eyes, and fingertips all responded sharply to the oppressive atmosphere. Staring ahead with focused intensity, Jinwoo had the distinct sense that he had felt something like this before. The feeling reminded him of a place he hadn't forgotten, the second-level dungeon that had haunted his memory. His eyes locked onto a powerful figure ahead of him, dressed in a red uniform and radiating a chilling, terrifying presence. That same bone-deep fear began to rise again, and as Jinwoo studied the figure, he understood. It was from this one man that the crushing energy was emanating.